Number 1. Hitchhiker. I've lived up in the mountains for a really long time. I'm not a hermit or anything like that, though. I have a really nice house in the mountains that I built when I was much younger. I've done all of my work from home because that is what I enjoy. I make enough money that I can do most of what I want, and that is pretty important to the story. I have been going to this cafe every day for decades. I always have my lunch there. It's a nice little country cafe, which is never really busy during the day. So I can go there, and I can have a nice peaceful lunch before going back home. It takes me about an hour to drive to the cafe, and an hour to drive home, of course. Like my house, the cafe is pretty much sitting by itself in the mountains. On this particular day, when I arrived, I noticed a customer that I had never seen before. There was something that was very off about him. It is also one of those things that you would have to see to really understand it. I mean, looks can be deceiving, but it had nothing to do with the way the guy looked. It was his presence that was intimidating. The way he carried himself, and the way that he behaved, gave me a negative impression of him. After I had gotten my food, and was eating and reading a book, the man came over to me, and he asked me if I could give him a ride. I definitely didn't want to, but I didn't even have to say anything. The waitress, who knew me very well, told him that I'm usually there for several hours every day, reading my book. He would have a much easier time just hitchhiking. The man seemed fine with that. He asked me if that was right, and if I was sure I couldn't give him a ride, and I let him know that she was right. I would be here for a while longer. The man said okay, and he went outside. The waitress then told me that he had been in the cafe for quite a while. He had said some crazy and disturbing things to her. She was worried that if he got into my car, I wouldn't be coming back alive. I watched for a while as the guy paced back and forth in front of the cafe. I kept waiting for him to come back in and maybe ask me for a ride again. And I kept hoping he'd find a different ride before I left. Eventually, a white car stopped by the road. The waitress walked over to me while I was looking outside. We both watched him get into the car after talking to the guy for a moment. Then they drove off. "Looks like you are okay then," the waitress commented. "Hopefully, we won't ever see that guy again. He just really made me very uneasy." After a while, I stopped thinking about the guy and just went back to reading my book. When it was time for me to go, I left the waitress a really good tip, and then I went out and got into my car. I did always enjoy my drive, even after living in the mountains for as long as I have been. It was a quiet drive, and I rarely came across other cars. So I was a bit surprised when I was going down the road and I saw a white car sitting on the side of the road. I thought someone might have needed assistance, so I pulled up behind the car off the side of the road. It wasn't until I got out of the car that I figured out that this was the car I saw pick up the hitchhiker. I was a bit worried, remembering the hitchhiker, but I couldn't tell if anyone was in the car, so I walked up to it, very cautiously. When I got up to the car, I noticed something that I wished I didn't see. The driver of the car was laying in a bloody mess in the front seat. The hitchhiker was nowhere to be seen. At first I thought the driver was dead, but he moved a bit when I got to his window. He was still alive, but I wasn't sure how much longer he would be alive if I didn't try to help him and get him to the hospital, which was quite a drive away. Fortunately, I was able to get him there to save his life. The hitchhiker had attacked him, stabbed him several times, took his money, and then ran off into the countryside. While I was glad the man was alive, It was still terrifying what had happened to him, and it was terrifying what might have happened to me if I had given him a ride. Number 2. The Cabin. I am not like the Unabomber or anything, but I haven't always liked spending my time around people. For many years of my life, I lived out in a cabin in the middle of the countryside. The cabin itself belonged to an uncle of mine before he passed away. Then he left it to me in his will, and I decided to move into it myself. The cabin might not have been as bad as something you may have seen in the Evil Dead movies or anything, but it wasn't really the greatest thing either. But it was away from people, and he also left me some money too. So for a long time, I was able to just quit my job and go live in that cabin. It is important to know that although this cabin was very far out in the woods, it's not like it was lost in the middle of nowhere. It was far out in the hills, but there was an old dirt road that led to it. The road did end at the cabin, however, and you couldn't go any further out in the hills, unless of course you went on foot. I spent a lot of time up there by myself, but I never got lonely. I took care of myself by going into town for anything that I really needed, but trying to live off the land for other things. I hunted for a lot of my food, had a garden for other stuff, and only got from town what I couldn't get this way. But the surrounding property was also mine, and it was nice because rarely, if ever, did anyone ever come out to visit me. So you can imagine my shock when one night, when I was sitting at a fire, and I heard a pounding on my front door. I was listening to the radio, AM radio of course, being all that I could really get that far out, and jumped when I heard the pounding. I then didn't move at first because I wasn't sure how I should react. No one had ever come knocking on my door during the day, much less at night. I was cautious. I had been living out in the cabin for so long by this point that I wasn't scared of the surroundings at all. I never really was afraid of the dark or anything like that, but this was unusual. So I grabbed my gun before I went toward the door. Even then I approached it very cautiously. I went up to the door, but I didn't unlock it right away. I called out, asking who it was that was on the other side of the door. All I heard back was the wind that had been blowing pretty hard through the trees all evening. But before I could just dismiss the knocking, I heard another pounding at the door. I again asked who it was. I let them know that I wasn't about to open the door until the person identified themselves. However, once again, there was no answer to it. I approached the door very carefully. Although I said that I wasn't going to open it without an ID, I had to know what was going on. So very carefully, I unlocked and then opened the door. I kept my gun up though, just in case there was some danger out there. There was no one outside of my door. However, when I got a good look at the front of the door, it looked like there was blood on the door. There was also some on the porch. So I got concerned. I wondered if there was someone out there who was hurt. But if they were, and they had come looking for help, why would they have run away? It really was only moments from when I heard the second knocking before I opened the door. There wasn't much light outside, but the moon was almost full, so I was able to see a little bit outside. Keeping my gun in place, I slowly walked out of the cabin and out in the front. I quickly looked around, trying to see if I could notice someone, anyone, out there, but I really didn't see anything. I was obviously confused and not sure what I should do, but since I didn't see anyone anywhere, I decided to go back into my cabin and just lock the door again. It was just way too strange, and I didn't want it to get any stranger. Right when I was about to open the door, however, something stopped me. The wind was blowing really hard, but I heard a sound that sounded like a person crying out into the night. So I stopped and turned around. It was coming from on the road. I didn't see anything, but it did keep me from going inside the cabin right away. I decided to slowly walk out to the road to see what the crying might have been. I guess I should have gone inside and gotten a flashlight, but the whole situation had me on edge. I wanted to keep both hands on my shotgun, just in case I needed it to protect myself. My driveway, leading to the road, was pretty long, and I wasn't walking very quickly down it. I was trying to make sure that I was aware of everything that was going on around me, so I took my time. About halfway down the driveway, I noticed some movement up ahead of me. I could see that a person was now standing at the end of the driveway. It was nothing but the outline of a person, though, because there wasn't much light. But it was definitely a person. However, after standing there for a moment, the figure started running toward me at a really fast pace. I reacted as quickly as I could, and I shot a warning shot into the air. This caused the figure to stop so suddenly that it almost tripped and fell over. I figured since I wasn't able to make out much of his features, he must have not realized that I was carrying a gun on me. The figure then stood up, but rather than retreat, it stood there for a few moments, almost as if it was trying to stare me down. And we both stood that way for what seemed like a really long time, but it probably wasn't very much time at all. And then, rather than come at me or retreat back to the road, the figure took off into the woods. If he was trying to lead me back into the woods, he didn't succeed at his goal. There was no way I was going to be going out there in the middle of the night. After looking around in all directions to see if I could find anything else, I decided I would just go ahead and head back to the cabin. When I got to the cabin, I once again checked all around it to see if someone was there. I had the idea in my mind that perhaps whoever had been knocking on my door might have been running from the guy that I saw. Or, as far as I knew, it was only one person and he was doing it all himself. I didn't know, but I wanted to make sure that if someone was hurt, I was going to be able to help them if I could. After not finding anything, nor encountering the man I had seen again, I went back into the cabin. I made sure the door was secured, and I closed all the curtains so no one could see into the cabin. For the rest of the night, I sat in my easy chair with my shotgun right beside me in case I needed it. After a while, the nerves began to fade a bit, and I eventually drifted off to sleep. The following day I checked outside to see if there was any further sign of the activity from the previous night. There was still blood on the door, and there was some blood on the ground as well, but not enough to lead me anywhere. Nothing appeared to be damaged, other than minor things that might have been caused by the wind, but I was unable to find anything at all that could help to explain what had gone on the previous night. That was the only time such an incident ever took place when I was living in the cabin. I have no explanation for what had gone on. I guess someone might have just been messing with me, but that doesn't make any sense. Why would anyone be that far out in the hills just to mess with someone? I also wondered if it might have been someone my uncle had known and made an enemy of. I wasn't sure, and I never found out anything about what happened that night. Number 3, Doggone. Last Tuesday night, I was waiting for 7 p.m. so I could load up the truck and head off to the wildlands for a solo hippie chick campout. It was my birthday gift to myself, a night of no stress and nature, truly relaxing. I've been busting my butt and making serious progress repairing and moving into an old fixer-upper house. Made it through another year. That's worth celebrating. I had to wait until sundown to load the truck. I'm severely allergic to the sun. I wanted to be home before the sun came over the mountain the next morning. This mini break would be fun. I miss my fur babies if I'm gone longer than that. I went to the mountains behind my house, just in the foothills. About 3 miles from where I met a mountain lion the hard way. I wasn't alone, even though I was solo. Barbie was with me, a pink and silver revolver. It's the Wild West out here. Everyone has a sidekick and advised me to get one, so I did. They laugh at the color, but they don't laugh at my target papers at the range. I set up an extra tent and chairs, so it looks like more people are around, and I chose the most remote spots I could find. I was debating whether or not to have a campfire, and decided not to. Wildfires where I live is my biggest fear of living in this area. If it was winter, absolutely, but this is the beginning of fire season. I stand with Smokey the Bear. I can prevent a fire by not having one. I was looking up at the empty circle of chairs around the fire pit and cracked myself up. I was thinking I could ward off weirdos by putting a stuffed animal in each chair, and if anyone came into my camp, start talking with the animals. Be the crazy one people fear in the woods. Insert Chucky face here. I usually have no service in that area, but my phone dinged. It was a new Killer Orange Cat video. Perfect timing. I listened and watched the kitties, in the dark, in the woods, feeling guilty for leaving my fur babies for 12 hours. Next, I had some munchies from my snack bag and planned what to do next. Play music and draw. Smoke a doobie, stretch out, and watch for UFOs. I decided a flashlight hike would be fun. I have reflective trail marker ties, so I won't get lost. I had wandered about 20 minutes from my camp. I had a solar yard light, so I had light in my camp, and I could find my way back easily if I left it. I only used one because bugs like the light. I was far enough away that I couldn't see the light. No big deal. Trail markers are great. My first wildlife encounter. I heard crunchy footsteps that were erratic, trotting, stopping and starting, kind of aimless. I thought it might be a fawn, but there were no slow, heavy footsteps with it. Probably a dog. Too big for a squirrel, too small for a lion or bear. When it got closer, I shined the light on it, and it was a coyote. He avoided me and meandered away through the trees. I was glad it wasn't a hungry pack. I thought I saw a flash of light in the distance, but didn't see it again. A little later, I heard crunching footsteps, but not close to me. Every sound is loud at night. I stood still because my footsteps could be heard too. I watched and saw a light swinging up and down, and heard a man's voice yelling, "Benji!" I didn't want to be seen and ducked behind a scrubby plant. I put my hand over the red light flashlight and stayed still. I watched the light travel about 8 trees away and thought he would pass me by, but he changed directions and was coming my way. I stood up and turned my light to white. This encounter could be awkward. He asked if I had seen his dog. I answered no, just a coyote. He got excited and said, "That's my dog." I pointed my light in the direction, and the guy hurried off. I decided to get back to camp. I'd have enough adventure. I collected the trail markers as I made my way back for next time. As I was walking back, I heard the man yelling and walking, half stomping, cussing out the poor coyote, going back the way they came. I listened for a vehicle engine, but heard only silence. Somewhere out there, the man and the coyote or camping. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. First, a shout out to all my paid Patreon members, beginning with my VIPs, Pixie Hopper 8 and Chiamerah Cat. Also, Dinky Ooze, EricaOdd, Tracy Sellars, Chronic J, and Heidi H. I hope you enjoyed these stories. The third story is from Coogi, who always posts on my videos and has been listening for a long time. She celebrated her birthday recently just like I did. I hope that you enjoyed my narration of your story. I've done a few of her stories before and they've all been really fun, so I hope you all enjoyed that too. And if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and the bell. If you hit the bell, you'll be notified of new videos. Leave me a comment to let me know what you thought, and share it with someone you think might enjoy it. If you have an original story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, my email address is in the description. And now, I'd like to thank all my free Patreon members, including my newest member, Remi, Venikins, Rose Metro, Woofer McWooferson, Cindy Cleveland, Vanapira Rayne, William H., Alien Unicorn 13, Kathryn Lynch, The Bama Guy 334, Michael Vasquez, Bonnie Lynn, Collet Bond, Krista Pike, Prince UVA, HF Creations, Bonnie Gibbs, Linda Moore, DJ Lira, and Evil Black Cat. But most importantly, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed because you never know where Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.